I'm Alina, and I thought I knew what love looked like after 12 years with Nathan, 12 years of promises whispered under a summer sky. But standing in the glow of Maris Cove's light festival, surrounded by floating lanterns and the magic of a coastal night, I felt more alone than ever. My heart ached for a connection that had slipped away, and in a moment of raw desperation, I wandered into a hidden corner of the town square. What I found there, a stranger with a silver mask and a voice that pierced through my numbness, changed everything. Now, I'm caught in a storm of guilt and awakening, and I'm not sure if I'll ever be the same, or if Nathan will ever notice what's unraveling right beside him. Picture this: a single, fleeting shadow stretching long across a cracked pavement, cast by a flickering street lamp in the dead of night. That shadow is mine, and I've been chasing it for longer than I care to admit, searching for something I can't quite name. My name is Alina, and at 36, I thought I'd have life figured out by now. I've been with Nathan, my husband, for 12 years. 8 of those bound by a promise we made under a summer sky. He's 38, a corporate consultant, always buried in spreadsheets and late-night calls, his mind 1,000 miles away even when he's right beside me. Lately, there's a chasm between us, an unspoken void that grows wider with each passing day. I don't know how to bridge it, or if I even can, but I'm desperate to try. That's why I suggested we escape for a weekend to Maris Cove, a quaint coastal town nestled against the rugged shoreline, famous for its annual light festival. I'd heard stories of it, a night where the impossible feels real, where paper lanterns drift into the heavens like whispered dreams, and the ancient cobblestone streets come alive with projections of fire and water weaving across weathered walls. I pictured us there, hand in hand, the magic of the place weaving its spell around us, pulling us back to a time when a single glance from him could set my heart racing. I spent days planning, packing with a kind of nervous hope I hadn't felt in years. There's this dress I tucked into my suitcase, a deep blue number with delicate embroidery along the hem, the kind of thing I imagined would make Nathan stop in his tracks, his eyes lingering on me the way they used to, igniting a spark we've both let fade. I could almost feel the moment, his hand brushing against mine, a quiet promise of something more under the glow of those lanterns. Maris Cove was everything I'd dreamed it would be as we rolled into town that first evening. The air carried the sharp tang of salt from the ocean, mingling with the faint sweetness of caramelized sugar from street vendors. A breeze tugged at my hair, cool against my skin, as the murmur of excited crowds buzzed around us, their voices rising and falling like waves. Somewhere nearby, street musicians played haunting melodies on violins and flutes, the notes weaving through the air, pulling at something deep inside me. The cobblestones beneath my feet felt uneven, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, and as I looked up, I saw the first hints of the festival's magic, golden light spilling from every corner, casting intricate patterns of flame and tide across the ancient walls. It was like stepping into a fairy tale, a world where anything could happen, where broken things could be mended. But even as I drank in the beauty of it all, there was a weight in my chest I couldn't shake. Nathan walked beside me, his steps measured, his gaze fixed somewhere ahead, not on me. I wanted to reach out, to grab his hand, to pull him into this moment with me, but something held me back. I adjusted the strap of my blue dress, the fabric soft against my skin, hoping the way it hugged my frame might catch his attention, might remind him of the woman he once couldn't look away from. But as we wandered deeper into the heart of the light festival, the magic around us only seemed to highlight the distance between us. The town square of Maris Cove was a sight to steal your breath. Hundreds of paper lanterns floated above, glowing like fireflies against the deep indigo sky, their warm light casting a golden haze over everything. Children darted through the crowd, their laughter ringing out as they chased iridescent bubbles that shimmered before popping into nothingness. Across the ancient stone walls, projections of flames danced and flickered, blending into waves that seemed to crash and recede in an endless rhythm. It felt like the world itself was alive, pulsing with a heartbeat I could almost hear. I turned to Nathan, my voice soft but eager, pointing to a lantern shaped like a perfect star, its edges delicate and intricate. "Look at that, isn't it beautiful?" I said, hoping for just a flicker of connection. But he didn't even glance up from his phone, his thumbs tapping away at some urgent work message. "Just a moment, Alina," he muttered, his tone flat, distracted. My heart sank a little deeper, but I swallowed the sting and kept walking beside him, the cobblestones uneven under my feet. A little further on, I stopped to watch a street artist painting with light, his hands moving in swift, graceful arcs as beams of color formed shapes in the air. A bird, a flower, a fleeting dream made real for just a second before it dissolved. I stood there, mesmerized, waiting for Nathan to notice, to share in this small wonder. But when I turned, he was already several steps ahead, his head still bowed over that glowing screen, oblivious to me, to everything. I felt a sharp ache bloom in my chest, standing there in my carefully chosen dress, surrounded by couples holding hands, their whispers and soft touches a stark contrast to the cold space beside me. I wasn't just unseen, I was invisible. The beauty of the festival, the lanterns, the music, it all seemed to mock me, a cruel reminder of what I'd hoped this night would be. How could I be so alone in a crowd so full of life? My thoughts grew bitter, jagged, as I wondered how long I'd been fading in Nathan's eyes, how long I'd been begging for a scrap of his attention without even realizing it. I needed space, just a breath to clear the weight pressing down on me. So I let my steps slow, drifting a few paces away from him, my gaze wandering over the sea of faces around me. That's when I noticed the street theater performers weaving through the crowd, their presence almost otherworldly. Their costumes were a spectacle, flowing capes in shades of midnight, and I found myself wandering a little further from the main bustle of the festival, my feet carrying me toward a small fountain tucked away near a quieter edge of the square. The sound of water trickling over smooth stone was a soft reprieve from the vibrant chaos behind me. Nathan was still by the main stage, his silhouette a distant figure hunched over his phone, completely unaware of where I'd drifted. The crowd around me began to thin as people moved toward the lantern release ceremony, their excited murmurs fading into a dull hum. I stood there alone, my fingers absently tracing the intricate embroidery on the hem of my blue dress. The delicate threads a reminder of the effort I'd put into this night, an effort that felt so wasted now. A heavy weight settled in my chest, the ache of being unseen pressing harder with every breath. I was lost in that thought, drowning in the quiet of my own invisibility, when I sensed a presence near me. He appeared almost out of nowhere, the silver-masked stranger I'd glimpsed earlier among the performers. His movements were unlike anyone else's. He didn't just walk, he seemed to glide, as if the cobblestones beneath him bent to his will. The mask covering half his face caught the faint light of nearby lanterns, glinting with every subtle tilt of his head, casting sharp reflections that danced like tiny sparks. I couldn't see his eyes clearly, but I felt them on me, piercing through the haze of my thoughts. My breath caught as he stepped closer, his presence both unsettling and magnetic. Then he leaned in, his voice low and deliberate, each word measured as if he'd chosen it just for me. "You look like someone who's already awake," he whispered, his tone carrying a weight I couldn't quite decipher. My heart skipped, a jolt of surprise mixing with an unexpected intrigue. I managed a small, hesitant smile, unsure of what to say, my mind racing with questions I didn't dare voice. Before I could find my words, he extended a gloved hand toward me, the black leather catching the dim light, a silent invitation hanging in the air between us. Against every shred of logic screaming in my head, I reached out, my fingers trembling slightly as they met his. There was an electric charge in that touch, a current that ran through me, waking something I'd long thought dormant. Without a word, he guided me away from the fountain, away from the fading noise of the festival, leading me around a shadowed corner into a hidden courtyard nestled behind an old stone building. The world seemed to hush as we stepped into that space, the only light coming from a single lantern swaying gently from a low-hanging branch, its warm glow casting soft shadows across the ground. Faint projections of waves and flames seeped through the archway we'd passed under, their ghostly dance playing along the edges of the courtyard, adding an almost dreamlike quality to the moment. Ivy clung to the ancient stone walls surrounding us, its dark green tendrils weaving intricate patterns as if guarding secrets of its own. The air carried the faint, intoxicating scent of jasmine, mingling with the distant, rhythmic crash of waves against the shore, a reminder of the ocean just beyond. A surreal calm washed over me, wrapping around my frayed nerves like a gentle tide, even as a voice in the back of my mind screamed that this wasn't real, that I should turn back, run back to the safety of the familiar. But I didn't. I couldn't. There was something in the stillness of this place, in the way the stranger stood before me, his masked face unreadable, yet somehow so knowing, that held me captive. And then, in that quiet sanctuary, something shifted between us. I don't know how to explain it, but there was a moment of raw, unspoken honesty, a connection that didn't need words. I let go of everything, the hurt, the loneliness, the weight of being invisible, and I crossed a line I never thought I would. With the stranger, it wasn't about reckless abandon or fleeting desire. It was something deeper, a quiet rebellion against the emptiness I'd carried for so long. His touch was careful, deliberate, as if he understood the fragility of what I was offering. We didn't speak much, but the silence between us was filled with understanding. As I stepped out of the hidden courtyard, the weight of what had just happened clung to me like a second skin. My heart was still racing, my mind a storm of conflicting emotions, as I smoothed the fabric of my blue dress with trembling hands. The delicate embroidery felt rough under my fingertips, a stark reminder of the night I'd planned versus the reality I'd just stumbled into. I took a shaky breath, forcing my legs to move, to carry me back to the bustling streets of Maris Cove. The lantern light that had once seemed so warm and inviting now felt harsh, almost accusing, as if it could see right through me, exposing every secret I was desperate to bury. Each golden glow seemed to pierce my skin, illuminating the turmoil I couldn't escape. The festival was still in full swing as I emerged from the shadows, the cobblestones uneven beneath my feet, the air thick with the scent of salt and sugar. Laughter and music swirled around me, but it all felt distant, like I was watching it through a pane of glass. I scanned the crowd, my chest tight, until I spotted Nathan exactly where I'd left him, near the main stage. He was still hunched over his phone, the blue light casting sharp angles across his face, completely oblivious to the earthquake that had just shattered my world. Seeing him there, so unchanged, so unaware, made something twist painfully inside me. How could everything look the same when I felt so utterly different? I approached him slowly, my steps hesitant, as if the ground might crack open beneath me. The projections of fire dancing across the ancient walls seemed to burn into my skin, their flickering flames mirroring the chaos in my mind. Every burst of laughter from the crowd felt like a pointed jab, an accusation I couldn't shake. I stood beside Nathan, close enough to feel the warmth of his presence, but I said nothing at first. My mind was elsewhere, trapped in vivid flashes of that secluded courtyard, the stranger's masked gaze locking onto mine, the warmth of his touch lingering like a phantom on my skin, the silence between us that had spoken louder than any words ever could. Those moments replayed over and over, a loop I couldn't escape, each memory pulling me further from the man standing next to me. I swallowed hard, trying to anchor myself in the present, and forced a casual tone as I spoke. "Hey, do you want to watch the next Lantern release?" My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears, like it belonged to someone else. Nathan barely looked up from his screen, his response a vague grunt, a half-hearted sure that didn't even pretend to carry interest. A strange mix of relief and resentment washed over me. Part of me was glad he didn't notice the tremor in my words, the way my hands fidgeted at my sides, but another part ached with bitterness. How could he not see it? How could he not sense that something fundamental had shifted inside me? Was I truly so invisible to him, even now? Standing there, surrounded by the festival's magic, I felt the weight in my chest grow heavier. The contrast was surreal. The glowing lanterns drifting like dreams above us, the vibrant projections weaving stories of fire and water across the walls, the joyous energy of the crowd. All of it clashed violently with the storm raging within me. I'd come here hoping to rekindle something with Nathan, to feel seen again, but instead, I'd found something else entirely. And now, I was caught between horror and defiance. Part of me was appalled at what I'd allowed to happen, at the boundary I'd crossed in that hidden courtyard. But another part, a quieter, fiercer part, refused to let go of the memory. For the first time in so long, I'd felt alive, truly awake, as if I'd been sleepwalking through my life until that moment. I clung to that feeling, even as guilt gnawed at the edges of my thoughts. My gaze drifted upward, drawn to a single lantern floating gently into the night sky. Its glow was fragile, a tiny ember against the vast darkness, yet it held a defiant beauty, rising despite the weight of the world pulling it down. I stared at it, mesmerized, and felt something shift inside. As I stood there beside Nathan, the lantern release ceremony reached its crescendo, a breathtaking spectacle that seemed to pull the entire world into its orbit. Hundreds of glowing orbs ascended into the night sky, their soft golden light piercing the darkness like a chorus of silent promises. The crowd around us erupted in cheers, a wave of sound that crashed over me, vibrant and alive, yet somehow it only deepened the silence within. I was shoulder to shoulder with Nathan, our bodies so close I could feel the faint warmth of his arm against mine, but in my heart, we were miles apart. The noise of the festival, the laughter, the shouts, the distant strains of music drowned out the chaos swirling in my mind, but it couldn't touch the ache that had settled there, heavy and unyielding. I turned my head to look at him, really look at him, perhaps for the first time in months. Under the flickering glow of the lanterns, I saw the toll of his endless work etched into his face. His eyes, once so full of life when they met mine, were now shadowed with exhaustion, dulled by late nights and endless stress. Deep lines creased his forehead, a map of worries I hadn't noticed piling up. His fingers gripped his phone like it was a lifeline, knuckles pale from the tension, as if letting go would mean losing everything. I searched his profile for something familiar, something to anchor me, but all I found was a stranger wearing the face of the man I'd loved for over a decade. And in that moment, I realized the anger I'd been carrying, the bitterness over his distance, his absence, had faded. In its place was a deep, aching sadness, a mourning for what we'd lost, for the connection that had slipped through our fingers like sand. My hand moved almost on its own, reaching for his, a desperate gesture born from a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a spark left, a tiny ember we could fan back into flame. My fingers brushed against his, tentative, seeking, but his hand was limp in mine, unresponsive, as if I'd grasped at empty air. His gaze didn't waver from the screen, not even a flicker of acknowledgement, his attention tethered to a world I couldn't reach. My chest tightened, a sharp pang slicing through me, but it wasn't just pain. It was clarity. Standing there, amidst the soaring lanterns and the jubilant crowd, I made a choice. Not to confess what had happened in that hidden courtyard, not to walk away from him right then and there, but to carry this secret as my own. It wasn't about hiding from him. It was about protecting something fragile within myself, something I was only beginning to understand. As that decision settled over me, I felt a subtle shift, like a weight lifting just enough to let me breathe a little deeper. What happened in that secluded space with the masked stranger wasn't just a betrayal of the vows I'd made. It was a wake-up call, a jolt that had shattered the numbness I'd been living in for far too long. I'd needed to feel alive, to remember what it was to be seen, to be touched with intention. And in that moment, I had. I'd felt the rush of my own heartbeat, the warmth of a connection that reminded me I was more than a shadow in someone else's life. And as I stood there, watching another lantern drift upward, I realized I didn't regret it. Not the choice to follow the stranger, not the quiet intensity of what we'd shared in the glow of that single swaying light. It wasn't about guilt anymore. It was about acknowledging a truth I'd buried. That I'd been starving for something real, and I'd found it, even if just for a fleeting breath. The internal shift was profound, though it unfolded in silence. I was no longer waiting for Nathan to turn and see me, to notice the woman standing beside him, yearning for his gaze. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was starting to see myself. Not through his eyes, not through the lens of our marriage, but as I was. Flawed, searching, but undeniably awake. I let my eyes follow the ascent of the lanterns. Each lantern seemed to carry a piece of my heart with it. The walk back to our hotel room in Maris Cove felt like a journey through a different world, one where every step echoed with the weight of what I'd experienced. Nathan and I moved side by side, our shadows stretching long across the quiet streets, the festival's vibrant energy fading into a distant hum behind us. The silence between us was heavier than it had ever been, a thick, tangible thing that pressed against my chest. But for once, I wasn't scrambling to fill it with empty words or forced smiles. I let it sit there, raw and unapologetic, as my mind wandered far from the man beside me. My thoughts were still tangled in the hidden courtyard, caught in the memory of a stranger's gaze behind a silver mask, the warmth of a connection that had ignited something I couldn't extinguish. When we reached our room, the familiar creak of the door felt like an intrusion into my reverie. I set my small bag on the bed, my movements mechanical as I unzipped it and began to unpack. My fingers brushed against the soft fabric of that deep blue dress, the one I'd worn with such naive hope earlier tonight. I lifted it out, tracing the delicate embroidery along the hem, each stitch a reminder of the woman I'd been just hours ago, desperate for a spark, for a glance, for anything to pull me out of the fog I'd been living in. I folded it slowly, deliberately, as if tucking away that version of myself, knowing I couldn't go back to her. Not entirely. I placed it in the drawer, shutting it with a quiet click, and turned to see Nathan already sprawled on the bed. His phone was still clutched in his hand, the screen casting a faint blue glow across his tired face. Within moments, his breathing slowed, his grip loosening as sleep claimed him, oblivious to the storm still raging inside me. I stood there for a long moment, watching him, feeling the chasm between us widen even in this small, shared space. My heart didn't ache with the same sharp pain it had earlier. Instead, there was a dull, persistent throb, a quiet resignation. I turned away, my bare feet padding softly across the cool floor to the window. I pushed the thin curtain aside and gazed out at the dark expanse of the ocean beyond. The water was a vast, inky void, its surface catching faint glimmers of moonlight, whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. In the distance, the last traces of the festival's glow lingered on the horizon, a fading ember of the night that had changed everything. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, letting the stillness of the scene seep into me, and I admitted something to myself I'd been avoiding for far too long. I don't know what comes next. I don't have a map for this, no neatly drawn path to follow. I won't seek out the stranger again. That moment in the courtyard, under the sway of a single lantern, was a singular flame, one I don't intend to chase. Nor will I confess to Nathan. Not now. Maybe not ever. This isn't about deceit or fear of consequence. It's about holding on to something that's mine alone. A piece of myself I've only just rediscovered. As I stood there, the ocean's rhythmic murmur filling the silence, I realized I've been asleep in my marriage, in my life, for longer than I can remember. I've drifted through days, weeks, years, wrapped in a numbness I mistook for contentment. But that fleeting encounter, however wrong it might seem to the world, was a jolt to my system. It woke me up. It reminded me of the heat of my own pulse, the thrill of being truly seen, if only for a stolen breath in time. And I can't unfeel that, can't unsee the woman I glimpsed in myself under that dim, swaying light. There's a quiet strength growing inside me now, a determination I haven't felt in ages. I want to live differently, to step into each day with intention, even if I don't yet know what that looks like. I don't have answers, and I'm not pretending to. Will I stay with Nathan? Will I find a way to don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story? This will help us create more engaging stories for you.